So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our viewers from around the world. My name is Alfonso Barrenechea. I'm a project manager here at Solarplaza. And today with two solar experts, we'll be discussing energy trading opportunities for asset owners, focusing in Europe, of course. Before I introduce them, I'll do a quick rundown of the agenda, who Solarplaza is, etc. And then we'll have more than enough time to discuss the details about this topic. So yeah, as mentioned, I'll do a short introduction. Then we'll have a co-presentation. More than anything, it's kind of a discussion, a chat between Yanis Grammatikakis, Director of Product Marketing at Enaxis, as well as Jan Müller, Director of Solar Asset Management at Statkraft. And of course, we'll save the last 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A. Something I do suggest already for all attendees, as soon as you have a question, feel free to type it out, because as the queue for questions lines up, we will try to address them obviously in order of relevance, but also in order of first come, first serve. So don't wait until the Q&A to ask your questions. My colleague Tom, who's behind the scenes, and I will be filtering for these questions. So as soon as it's time for Q&A, we want to make sure we have all the questions ready. And so a little bit of background on Solarplaza before we start. It's our business to accelerate the sustainable energy transition. And how we do that? Well, we do that by sharing knowledge and networking. The company was established in 2004. We're based in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. We've done over 180 events in over 44 countries. And we have connected over 60,000 solar PV professionals via our events, newsletters, webinars, articles, etc. All sorts of solar-related resources. On top of that, Solarplaza, we've been expanding a bit, kind of our brand and our reach. And now the Solarplaza Consultancy is about to turn, a year or 2 years actually soon. And what we do is basically have integrated solutions for market entry and market penetration. In short, if you need to expand your intelligence on new markets, generate new business leads, or position yourself as a trusted brand, Solarplaza Consultancy can help you with that. And if you have any questions, you can obviously ask me through the Q&A, or you can go to solarplazaconsultancy.com and check it out. Yeah, so this webinar on energy trading and the thoughts on asset owners, of course, is a preamble, let's say, to one of our flagship European conferences, the Solarplaza Summit Asset Management Europe. In fact, this is our 10-year anniversary, so it's quite an exciting edition. Anyone who has attended before can expect the same as always, plus a couple of extra surprises. The dates are the 4th and 5th of October. It'll take place in Frankfurt, Germany. We're expecting over 300 attendees. We already have over 60 speakers and 35 trusted partners, Enaxis being one of them, and of course helping us with this webinar as well today. For those that still don't have a ticket and unfortunately missed the early bird discount, you can still claim your early bird discount with this discount code for the webinar. It's exclusive to the webinar, so it's a good chance for you to get that discount still. You can use a code Europe22-webinar10 and get yourself a ticket. And what do we discuss in this conference? Basically, all things revolving solar operations, asset management strategy, energy storage considerations, end-of-life planning, things as repowering, as well as a couple of finance topics, development topics, and everything you need to know to understand, how to operate a solar asset. Some practical notes so that we ensure that you enjoy the webinar to the best of your abilities. If you have any questions, please use the question box in the side panel. We will try to answer them in the Q&A session as mentioned. And again, I'd remind you, as soon as you have a question, feel free to write it down. We won't address it immediately, but we will be saving them for the Q&A session. Our goal there is to answer as many questions in a short time period as possible. So as soon as you have a question, feel free to write it. In case you have any technical issues, please also let us know in the question box. And my colleague off screen, Tom, will be helping you in case you have any technical difficulties. If you're having issues with the audio or the video, let us know and we'll try to help out. And before anyone asks this question, because we always get a couple of people asking it, the presentation slides and the full recordings will be made available of this webinar. They'll be available 2 to 3 days after the webinar, so after this date. And you can always access them via YouTube, via our website. Enaxis will be able to distribute them as well. And so a short introduction about our speakers. I'll let them do a proper introduction afterwards. Yanis Grammatikakis, Director of Product Marketing at Enaxis. He's one of the founding members at Enaxis, experienced product manager with both the engineering side as well as business experience. And he focuses on the entire product lifecycle, from strategic planning to tactical activities of Unity, something that we'll be hearing more about later. Our second speaker is Jan Müller, Director of Solar Asset Management at Statkraft. He started working in solar applications in the Pacific Islands in 1993. He was a technical director at Solar Century, and currently Jan is responsible for the EU fleet of PV under Statkraft's management. With all of that being said, gentlemen, I'll give you the stage now. Feel free to start the discussion. You have controls over the slides as well. Thank you.
Okay, hello everybody.
Hello from my side. Thank you, Alfonso. We are very happy to host this webinar together with Solarplaza. Thank you for the opportunity, and I also want to thank you, Jan, for joining us. And being, let's say, he started working with solar when I was just in the second year of the university. So I will let him start our presentation with agenda and a few slides, and we can have a good discussion among ourselves, and feel free to ask questions that we would be more than happy to answer at the end of this presentation.
Thank you, Jan. Yes. It's been a while. Let's see if so we're going to talk about opportunities for assets as we're moving through into a new era. That era is probably sort of it's a blend, isn't it? It's always flexing from one thing to another. Let's come on to the next slide. There we go. So we're going to run this the agenda. We're going to run through the shifting business models, going to run through sort of the history of it, have a look at how we connect the plants to the markets. These are from practical hardware and platform aspects through to the actual trading and flexibility aspects. So we're going to go through that range. And as part of that, we're going to come on to the rise of virtual power plants and how their role in the energy transition. And then, of course, as Alfonso said, the Q&A. So if we move through. So yes, I mean, the pre-subsidy PV world where I started my time was majority off-grid, solar home systems, navigation aids, yachts, resorts, all those sorts of things. Fast forward quite a few years into the late 90s and early 2000s, we get into the early grant schemes where it's just purely funded. Those of us aware of the German and the UK schemes, things like the 100,000 roofs. In the UK, it was 100 roofs, a slightly different scale. And then some years later, after a lot of work, certainly in the UK, Germany, you were much more successful and much earlier getting the feed-in tariffs in place, a necessary part of the development of the projects and getting the investment into those projects at the time. In order to get them rolling, we needed the feed-in tariffs. But that's beginning to move now. We're all seeing subsidy-free plants. And they now bring another aspect. They're not completely, they're subsidy free, but they need a route to market and you need to sell that power. And that's where you can then walk into the power purchase agreement area. So everybody needs a route to market. You need to take the energy physically off the grid, off the plant and into the grid. So that's it's a baseline requirement. The power purchase agreement, is that going to be a corporate agreement? So is it with a large off-taker? There are a variety out there. So large power consumers who wish to buy green energy. Or is it a trader, such as ourselves in Statkraft, where we're gathering together power from renewable plants and selling it into the market in a seamless manner? So there's a variety of requirements and options in there. Now, within that, there's also auxiliary services, which we're going to touch on. Yanis will talk more about that, in that it's not purely just delivery of power, it's then the various services we can provide to the grid to support it. As a last point on this section, renewables have changed dramatically. We've now got, I used storage in the 90s, but in a tiny manner. We've now got large-scale storage to be able to transition power through the day. We've got grid stabilization. We can actually manage the frequency without storage directly. They can work together. We have hydrogen electrolysis. This is definitely newer, but still really it's becoming mainstream. And then lastly, we're even getting to the point of hydrogen in a gas engine. So it's there are a variety of different possibilities that become a renewable technology. Plus, of course, offshore wind, onshore wind, and solar, the normal ones that we can help you with. And if we move on to the next slide. So you have to wait a little bit for Yanis's section. This is a very basic slide. We're just talking about what do you actually need in order to get this, to get these route to market and the power purchase agreements to work. Well, you need metering. You need a source of the megawatt hour records. It's a basic point, but you need to have that. You need an official meter operator. You need reliable data. You need to get that data in reliably so you can actually manage this. Without reliable energy data, you have trouble. Automation. You might think, automation at this point? Well, within Statkraft, and I believe in Access as well, we convert the terms of the agreements into code and into a presentation layer. Well, why do we do this? Well, we do this so we really understand what's going on underneath the bonnet of these agreements. I just urge everyone, maybe this is teaching my colleagues to suck eggs, as it were, but read the agreements. But don't just read them, then model them, because it can be surprising. When you actually model the agreements, what you think you read isn't always what transpires. So be careful on that. And the third point, active QA of the terms of these agreements. Monitor them, see what the reaction is. What do you actually get? So see what you thought you negotiated, actually what you're getting. Are there nuances in there which are difficult? Is it that the balancing is at the end of the year? Is it monthly? What work does that actually bring to you? So then once you've done that, you actually, you've read the contracts, you've understood them, you've modeled them, and now you actually understand them over a period of time. You can now go into the next agreements with a position of knowledge, and you can refine and adjust them as far as you can in the next agreements you negotiate. Another important part of these agreements is availability. You've got to report on your availability. You need to make sure that you're keeping them, the availability at the level required of those agreements. And of course, as high as possible. Weather forecasting, you may well have or behind the scenes there will be a weather forecasting service which the power is traded on the day ahead market. So be careful. You need a good weather forecasting system, and in some cases you need those weather forecasters to look out the window to see what's going on. Be careful. Sometimes they're not always that accurate, or they may be caught out, to be kind. They may be caught out by unusual weather events. Things like Saharan dust storms can definitely catch people unawares. And again, notifications. We need to advise these offtake partners of any downtime. So we need to do that in a timely manner and make sure they know so they can adjust their positions in the market. And I think this is where I hand over.
Yeah, and this is very interesting, Jan, that all those PPAs can become more and more complex. So sometimes they seem to be straightforward, but as you correctly said, when you actually go into the details and you model the actual details of what you have to do, how you have to do all those calculations, those can be complex. So this is very important. And, you know, with now as the market evolves and we have new flavors of PPAs, you know, all those virtual PPAs, third parties PPAs, all those things that of course helps a lot because they can more easily add more and more renewable capacity into the mix, but it adds some complexity as well. And a lot of the asset owners, they are not so used to that. So if you have a, I don't know, if you are an additional producer, energy producer, I think it's more easily for you to understand all the complexities. But for asset owners with renewable, sometimes because all of the developers and not IPPs, all of them, but many of them, they also come from the era of feed-in tariffs and auctions, etc. They are not so acquainted with all those processes. And so there is some extra caution that has to be made here. And ourselves as well, having the technology and the SCADA systems that we record everything that is happening on site with a lot of details, we can, and we help them, we have a tool that is called a PPA processor that can reproduce the calculations of the PPA, and they can cross-check all the results, the invoices, etc. And we have seen this from actual customer requests. So this is actually something that is happening, and there's a real need there. Now, as you said in the beginning, it's not only selling the energy. Now there are a lot more ways to add and increase your revenues from the renewable assets. Now that they get more well integrated into the grid and into the energy market, and and also the addition of battery energy storage, and the combination of the batteries with the wind and solar parks allows many more opportunities for new services, sometimes new for the renewable energy sites, not new for the world. And I have tried to put this slide here, some of them. So on the top, there is the auxiliary services. So we have the frequency response and regulation service, which is, I think, one of the most important auxiliary services that renewable energy sites and together with batteries can offer to the grid. And we see it in many countries. Some of them, they are more advanced. Some of them, they follow, but I don't think that there will be a single country that will not follow on the end. And taking, for example, UK, they have a very good market for all those frequency response services. They have the FFR, the firm frequency response. They have introduced 2 years ago dynamic containment. Now this spring they have had dynamic modulation and moderation. The market is really competitive. There are bids, daily bids, to allow the and the operators to offer this service to the market. And this is a revenue stream that can be added on top of the standard streams of actually selling the energy. We also see in several countries and grids other services like synchronization and black start, virtual inertia, which is a very hot topic, and how the renewable energy sites can help with virtual inertia now that they are more and more in the as a percentage of the total system capacity. Voltage support, of course, with reactive energy, and all those services that some of them in the past for the additional generators was just a service that they have to provide. Now they are becoming more competitive and a mix of the market. On top of that, we have, of course, the balancing market and demand response. So all the energy market has the balancing mechanism, capacity market, and operating reserves, so as to have, and this can also be used to optimize your revenues, combined with the traditional day ahead and intraday markets that are in operation. And of course, having, as I said, I'm saying it all the time, batteries into the mix can allow the energy shifting and arbitrage, so you can actually maximize your profit by selecting the most profitable periods to sell your energy. And in order to be able for the asset to provide all those services, I'm trying to move. Okay, we have the next slide. Then there is a very important part that the technology that allows all those market participation of the assets. And this is usually called the EMS system, the energy management system. And I will spend a few minutes to describe some of the functionalities that the EMS offer, also having into mind our systems. So this this EMS can be for a single site, so what we call a local EMS, or can be for a VPP, for a virtual power plant, that we are going to discuss later together with Jan. But what we see, it is applicable to both. And we are seeing that there are many cases that the sites are getting bigger and bigger, and it makes a lot of sense also to have individual revenue optimization and individual control of single sites. Of course, we are discussing about sites of several hundred of megawatts as well. So imagine that we see in Australia, in US, and now in Europe as well. So Spain is a market that we see a lot of big sites now that come into the grid and into operation. And this optimization makes sense for them as single entities. So this optimization doesn't need necessarily a VPP for that. So the first step, and we have this cycle here. So the first step, in order to be able to optimize your asset, is to have the service stacking capabilities. So this is the capability of the system to allow and actually optimally implement more than one services at the same time. Of course, this is something that has to be also allowed by the market, but there are many cases that there is no actual issue having more than two services at the same time. And I can get again UK as an example where it is perfectly okay, and it is what all the assets doing is to offer some frequency response service like dynamic containment and participate in the wholesale or in the balancing mechanism. This capability is twofold. One is the actual market decision, the market optimization. What is the amount of power that you contract in each of the services? And there's also the technical capability where the actual control system on site must be able to do it without affecting one service the other, which is also very important, because if you are not able to deliver, there's no point in offering this service stacking. A second step, once you have the capability to offer multiple services, is to have the energy and dispatch optimization, which is based on the forecasting that Jan was mentioning before. So you need an accurate power forecasting, and then you can actually implement energy shifting. You can utilize some storage capabilities. You can select when to export to the grid, in which price. You can, if you have the third step here, which is the price forecasting, you then combine those two, and you can have an optimization also based on the price and on the availability of the resource. So you can optimize based on how much sun is available. You can optimize avoiding curtailment that coming to the grid, and you can store it locally. You can do some energy arbitrage by selecting the correct intervals that you export the price. You export the energy to the grid with the correct price. Of course, avoid negative pricing, which is something that we were seeing at least last year, and many other capabilities when you have good forecasting of price and power forecasts. The fourth step here is market optimization, which can be also more, it can be less complicated or more complicated depending on what you want to do. The main idea behind it is how you finally select what to do with the energy that you have available. So you have the forecast, you have the battery, you know the state of charge of the battery, so you have this set amount of energy. How can I split this energy among the available markets? And there can be a lot of opportunities. I have an example here. So if we know that there's an opportunity in the wholesale market, we can opt out from an ancillary services and bid to the day ahead, or several other strategies. So an optimization problem here. And the final step in this cycle that we are discussing is the real-time dispatch optimization when you have a virtual power plant, where then you have the flexibility also to select which assets to employ in what services. So this last step can combine all the previous, adding the capability of a real-time decision making here. And all those things, they are, you know, when we discuss, it can be a good theory. In practice, everything is based on data, is based on information. So here I am just depicting a screenshot from our system where you can see a dashboard that we have created, that we have in our system. This is for energy marketing, where you can combine the information from what is happening on site using the SCADA information together with the market information. So we have a comparison of the bid, the energy bid, and the actual energy. This can be translated to money. So those are the euros or the pounds that comes from the specific system prices, and several tools that help the operator adjust the forecast and the bids based on the declared availability. So as Jan was mentioning, when you have the PPA or in whatever form you trade the energy, you must be able to say that, let's say, in 2 days there is a planned maintenance, so 50% of my asset will be out of operation, and this must be reflected in the forecasts and the actual bids into the market. So you need all those tools to be easy, and for the operators, for the operation and maintenance personnel, for the asset manager to be able to add this information that it will go seamlessly to the market. And our experience is that you can actually lose a lot of money by just missing slots like this. You know, if for some reason there is no straightforward procedure to declare that tomorrow 50% of my solar site will be off, the difference between the forecast and the actual energy and the imbalance cost can be very, very high. And so those easy steps, let's say, that can help the owner avoid penalties must be done and must be very, very straightforward. And then you can do all the other optimizations. But those basics things must be very easy from start. And Jan, I don't know if you want to comment something from your experience here. You already did about, you know, look out of the window first and understand if there's so much dust outside, the forecast must be inaccurate in the first place.
Exactly. Some of these things are some of it is very complex. This topic runs from a very simple basics quite rapidly, in fact, very rapidly through to really quite complex areas and layers of agreements. To get involved in trading, it is definitely a caveat emptor, sort of beware the buyer, beware the entrant into that area. It's really is a complex area. I would urge caution around that. And that's where you do need to come to entities who have that knowledge and experience. I mean, the good thing is we've come through this journey. I mean, I've been in this industry for 30 years now. It's a bizarrely long time for the solar industry. And we've now moved from wind power, solar energy, bio, hydropower, and they're all generated by these numerous producers around. Let's just restrict ourselves to Europe initially. And it becomes a challenge, but actually it's an opportunity. And that's where the virtual power plant comes in. The virtual power plant allows you to, and you could, as an individual, trade your energy, an individual plant to ourselves, Statkraft. And bizarrely, we both have the same name for our platform. Statkraft Unity is our trading platform, although they're not linked at all. And in Access call their platform for monitoring Unity as well. But I reiterate to the audience that there is no actual link. It's one of those strange events where we both choose the same name. But Statkraft Unity is our trading platform, and it brings them into one virtual large-scale energy supplier. So we're taking the step beyond from what Yanis, you've been discussing, and we're actually trading that energy onto the market. That allows us to connect with small, large-scale consumers, and the same on the generation side, although it is generally sort of larger generators that we work with, but certainly something to discuss. Statkraft Unity allows our customers intermittent generation to be scheduled seamlessly. So this then, and the point below, levers onto what you were saying, Yanis, on the various technologies. We draw those in and we layer them up to make them seamless and fully flexible. It allows the flexibility of the plants to be fully leveraged. It's like fully used and to work to the advantage of the renewable generators as well as the grid operators and consumers. Because this is another thing in the world we live in. The energy prices are quite dramatic and really challenging for us all. A great boon for us as a generator, maybe, but a real challenge as a consumer and as a society. These sorts of elements can help us manage those far better. And we're starting to actually do the linkage between the actual energy generation time and the consumption time. So it's a temporal link. So this is not standard in the market yet, but that's beginning to happen. So there's not just a guarantee of origin, a certificate of clean energy. That goes beyond that. We want to move beyond that. And those of you in the UK may be hearing these discussions around the separation of gas from the electricity price. This is part of it. A VPP can be part of that discussion. If we move on.
Yes.
So this is more your section. I mean, on this slide, I'd say so. There's Statkraft Unity. We're in the market operator box on the right hand side as you're looking at the screen, just to try and give some understanding of where we sit in this. Over to you, Yanis.
Yes. I have selected this slide in order to emphasize that although it is a very separate function of this market integration of the assets, I want to emphasize that this is a part of an ecosystem, and you need all the layers to have at the end to have a good and reliable market integration. And as in Access, we started, and we still, of course, doing the control and monitoring SCADA for solar sites, and battery sites, and we integrate wind sites or renewable assets and energy storage. So our main focus is the layers here, all those layers, that we start from the site by installing a reliable system able to get all the information from the site, together with a power plant controller, with an EMS system, with a local EMS system here that is able on one side to interoperate with the grid operator. So get commands from the grid operator, send feedback to the grid operator, a very important thing in order to be able to connect your site, and also do all the control that is needed in order for the site to perform as expected. All those information can be gathered in a central monitoring and asset management system, and effectively you can run a lot of analytics and reporting for asset performance management in order to optimize the performance. And we also have this VPP and market coupling platform that helps the asset to be more smoothly integrated in the market. And this has several different aspects, and one of these is also the VPP, which I want to have a closer look here. But Jan, you have to admit that Unit is a nice name, so that's why we selected this independently.
It's one of those funny coincidences, exactly.
So the VPP extension of our system does a lot of things in order to be able to aggregate information from different sites. So as you can see in the middle, there can be several different virtual power plants in the platform that are freely configurable, and you can select sites of different technologies. So you can have solar sites together with sites, with battery assets, with gas sites. There's no, let's say, any constraint here, and it is able to aggregate all the data coming from the SCADA systems for those sites, so as to give you to give the owner a picture of the aggregated capacity and the actual output of all those sites together. And to help the market integration, we can have several forecast feeds, either power forecast or price forecast or whatever forecast. And there are a few tools that can help work with all this information. So a first thing that is very important is the development that we have done with a machine learning algorithm to optimize forecasts. We have seen, and as Jan said in the beginning, those forecasts can be very inaccurate. So what actually helps is to combine the actual production of the site and the actual weather condition of the sites with the forecast, trying to provide a more accurate forecast, which is something that we are doing employing machine learning, and can work for both day ahead, intraday, and continuous market. And we have seen very, very promising results for this optimization, which, if you are in the position to have more than one forecaster and you have also several forecasts, forecasting time series, you can also do some selection of which one is the optimal forecast to be used at any point in time. If you need some more accurate short-term forecast for the next 30 minutes, let's say, or so, this can be combined with cloud cameras and systems that use those cloud cameras in order to have a very, very accurate short-term forecast of the power production, excuse me, for the next 30 minutes or so. So all those combinations are available in order to get some more accurate forecasting. Needless to say that all those forecasts can be also used, for hybrid sites that employs solar plus batteries with diesel generators, some off-grid or on-grid mini grids, where a short-term forecast of the power is very, very useful in order to make decisions of when to start your diesel generators, when you can use your batteries to power the site. So when you need an uninterruptible power supply without having, to utilize the grid, all these forecasting capabilities is a must. Apart from the forecasting, you can use tools like the pricing limit manager, where you can set up limits for pricing and the system can make decisions on when to sell or you can avoid negative pricing. There is, as we discussed before, the availability declaration, which now is combined with the actual availability of the sites, and you can also raise several reports and notification and alarms if the actual availability is not following the declared and vice versa, and if there is a very high difference between the expected power and the actual power. The expected power also is very important in the terms that the system, Unity system, can have a very accurate forecast of what the power should be based on the actual weather conditions. So this concept of a digital twin, let's say, that gives the output of the site based on the actual irradiance. Using this expected production, this can also be compared with the forecast and the actual, and you can draw very useful results. And all those, let's say, notifications and alarms, we can say them as alarms, can also be used for decisions during the trading, especially when you have continuous trading. There are capabilities for, of course, to integrate with the markets and provide the bids, and a lot of actual the settlements, reporting, billing, invoicing, all those tedious, let's say, work that has to be done after the clearance. So all in all, we try to combine the detailed knowledge of what is happening on site, production, availability, alarms, the intelligent control that we offer, and combine this with the market and the optimizers so as to have some optimal performance for the site.
Okay, I think this is a last section. So moving on into the trading aspect of it, similar stories you can see in the graphic on the right. We're using our Unity system to link together all the various technologies. For us in Statkraft, that means it's across Europe. It's a pan-European trading platform, and it's a real-time system. So it's able to trade very effectively, and that's shown in the fact we've got over 20 gigawatts of third-party generation across Europe. It's a big number, and what underpins that is a very expert team led by Duncan Dale and colleagues, and this is certainly Duncan and his team's area of expertise. So any deeper questions, by all means get in touch and I'll pass you on to Duncan. And we combine intermittent power, flex, So how do we actually, how we make deliver these intermittent power sources and manage them? As Yanis has been pointing at, you do have to make decisions about what's going to go first onto the grid, what's going to be best for your technology, and that's the work which our team do. We're also the largest spot trader in the UK and Germany, so we actually just deliver power onto the grid and trade the energy. And of that, in terms of numbers, so it's 1.5 gig of flex and 4.3 gig of renewables in the UK. So it's a large, strong balance sheet, really experienced team within the Statkraft trading and Unity team. I think one of the things which Yanis and I were talking about around this, and these are all complex areas, and they're delivering, optimizing the energy onto the grid and from the various technologies. But from my point of view and from my background, it really is, it has to be underpinned by the plants producing effectively, achieving what they're meant to achieve. And that's that day-to-day management of making sure the O&M contractors are aware and replacing units in a timely manner and aware of the KPIs. Then you can get the real benefits. So that focus on the nuts and bolts, what's it produced today, and that's then what's produced this month and then for the year, are really key there. It mustn't be lost sight of in this much more complex area where you can make money. You can make a lot of money, but be careful because you can lose it too. And that's why you come to a company like ours or for advice to Inaccess or all those good products underneath. So yeah, take care. Let's just keep making sure we produce what we say we produce from all these plants. It really is a responsibility and a joy for us all to have that each day in the asset management and O&M where we're building and operating these plants. It's a real responsibility for us. That's the end of mine.
And I think we are just 10 minutes before the end, so it's a good time for Q&A, yeah?
Yeah, Yanis, first of all, thank you very much, and that's exactly in time. You know, that was we have the last 10 minutes for Q&A. So already get started. We were filtering for a couple of questions, and we'll try to start generally and then dive into more specific questions. So the first one, I think, Jan, this is more for you. What are the common tips to ensure that you fully understand your PPA's deliverables? What are some common best practices that you can suggest to our audience?
It is, as I've said, it's as basic as actually read it, but read it carefully, and then where there's a formula, translate it into an Excel or into code and understand the reaction. Get some data, understand what does it do. So it's not just the reading it. And what I say is that be careful of reading just sections. It could be 180 pages. It could be a very long document, but you do have to read it to understand the whole aspects. I have seen it where sections have been divvied out between departments, and then the overview is lost. You really do need to understand the whole document. It will be intimidating, but do dive in. As you draw in advice from colleagues, you'll begin to stitch it together and understand it. But modeling it is a key point.
Great. Thanks for that. Then this next question, I believe it's for both of you. You know, it has a different interpretations in a way. How do you manage different O&M provider data inputs and the needs when looking into VPPs within Unity? So we talked a lot about data management and communication. How would you manage these in terms of having multiple O&M parties for all your projects scattered around Europe?
Would you like me to go first, Yanis, or do you want to take that?
I can go first, yes.
Okay.
It is very important to have a way to have all those data in a homogeneous format. So it is very important to actually integrate all those data into a single system. So this is what we actually do. So we get the different data from different SCADA, from different systems. We of course, we always suggest some best practices, but we know that having, 10, 20, I don't know, 50 different O&Ms, there are many different systems. So the secret here is in how you automate the data collection, how you clean the data. So you have to be able to actually validate and clean the data, and then insert them in the system in a way that they are homogeneous. So we know that when we are talking, there are some details that, you don't understand them until the moment you actually see the data. So things like that, meters that they can denote the energy output as minus, while other meters, as correctly it is a plus sign. There are some details that when you add all those data points to the system, it can be a mess. So the secret here is during the onboarding process, as we call it. So when you onboard a new asset in the system, you have to do it in a way that is repeatable. It is the same across the assets. You do the data validation, data correction, data curation, and with a rigorous Q&A procedure, you are sure that the data are then correct. And then you can forget it, more or less.
Anything to add from your side, Jan? I mean, we heard pretty much the technical explanation of it, and you receive it in a hopefully easy to digest, asset management version. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it is a very technical area, but we do work with a variety of SCADA providers, and we do require that the data is delivered to us in a very specific way. So we have Yanis and his team deliver via API data to us, and so do other suppliers, and it comes in a curated manner from all those sources. So it's the same structure and the same expectation every time. So now then we can work across a whole portfolio, knowing that all the data comes in a uniform manner. It will not be the same between each of the SCADA suppliers, but that supply from each SCADA supplier is the same within itself, and then you can work with it. So it's a good question. It's a big topic. We do use a variety of providers. We have a large portfolio within Access, but it is about that real quality assurance of data and rigorous application of structure. You cannot just change the structure. It has to be repeated every time, so that when you bring a new plant on, it's the same structure. It comes into your systems seamlessly. We didn't see that before. This is a result of a lot of work. Things would change.
Great, thanks for clarifying that part as well. The next question, Jan, also for you. Do you use any external or internal service providers for your forecasting models? Is this something that StatCraft does internally, externally, or a mix?
It's mainly external services.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly external services. As Yanis says, we have our own. Each of the plants has its own meteorological sensors, so you can start to stitch those together, and we do that in the background. And so we are validating the weather forecasting services as they come in. Often within a PPA route to market arrangement is actually a step away from us. So we don't, as an asset manager, so I'm not talking as StatCraft Unity now, I'm talking as a StatCraft asset manager, that weather forecasting service may be a step away from us and we don't have direct access to it. And that is one of the impediments, is actually trying to get to see what's going on inside that weather forecasting, to understand how accurate or inaccurate it may be.
Great, thanks for that. Jan, one more for you as well. This, I think, refers to, again, PPAs and kind of one of the things you were mentioning at the beginning. Are there any specific tools that you're using or softwares to interpret the agreements in the contract and turn them into formulas and code? I think, Jan, as you were also referring to that, so it's quite interesting to hear how you translate, PPA deliverables into some sort of code.
So I'm lucky to have built up a solar performance analysis team who are Python coders and have PV expertise and a variety of expertises. They translate the PPA agreement into code. So we take but it could be in Excel. It doesn't really matter. It's just we use it in code, so it's replicable across many sites. But yes, we do actually translate it in our own systems. We have a system called Beam that we use internally. So we draw the data in, for example, from Yanis's system in Access. We draw the data in, and then we curate and undertake further analysis, deeper, longer-term trend analysis, and also the PPA representation internally. So yes, it's not an external service. We do it for our own, the plants that we asset manage directly.
But yes, Python can be a tool that can be easily used for those purposes, with a combination with some Excel files. Usually you have to have all this information in a way that can be replicated and can be also tested with existing data from other sites, similar sites. So all this helps.
All right, great. Then I believe that's all the time we'll have for these specific questions. One last comment from Guy Atherton. Jan, he says greetings from him and Sabine. I guess a couple of colleagues of yours who got to tune in. To everyone else who got to tune in as well, thank you very much for staying with us for the whole hour, asking very engaging questions. Jan is Jan, thank you very much for sharing your expertise for an hour. I'd like to take these last 30 seconds just to remind anyone who's interested in attending the event, of course, this is your chance to get a discount and use our discount code displayed on the screen right now. Again, the recordings and the slides will be made available. They will be on our YouTube, and in Access we'll be distributing them as well. If you have any further questions that we did not have time to address, feel free to email them to me, at alfonso@solarplaza.com, and I'll try my best to get you in touch with either Jan or Yanis, depending on the question you have. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you very much.